I thought I'd give myself a smile even with my missing teeth. And I am going to run a Patreon. Actually, I'm going to run an immediate GoFundMe to help me get some teeth and also help with moving costs because I lost an expensive thing I bought, was going to return on Boxing Day. I lost it on transit. Anyways, I'm the Unprofessor. As I've adopted the name for now, Mike Clevin, also known in blog spaces Skookum1. You'll find my user page on Wikipedia and also why I was blocked, which wasn't, as whatever seems to be the case in Wikipedia, it never actually what is the case. Anyways, I won't get into that here. I'm here to continue my series on, there's no real term for this period, the period before ancient history. It is our mythographic history that is common to all of us in terms of war. Wherever you're from on the planet, whether you're Chinese or from India or even Australia or Africa, we all have common myths and origins. Myths and origins. I said myths in origins. I mean in origin, but also and origins. Anyways, part of those origins is this thing about a war in the sky. And there's been this finding of a meteorite in northern Greenland, and we know about the other meteorites that destroyed the dinosaurs. Now, the suggestion for Velikovsky electric universe thought, which is I'm watching a series from the Thunderbolts project, and it's called I had the name. It's not in the name of this particular title page I'm looking at now. I had it in my mind. I'll again tag it in the comments. Damn it, maybe I'll show you in a minute. What's it called now? There's a name for this series anyway. Yeah, it's a whole school of thought that's come out of engineers and scientists who've taken a look at everything that Immanuel Velikovsky, who was a colleague of Einstein's, in many things. And he was a medical doctor who was like a classicist as well as other things, many things, including, he was a doctor in medicine, but also a scholar of many, many things. He was a polymath, a generalist, somebody who is beyond having a degree. There weren't no degrees in the fields that he began making observations and revelations in papers, including another gentleman of that I also mentioned in the title of this video is Nikola Tesla, who also his whole universe also like Velikovsky's was electric and magnetic. And we live in this Newtonian paradigm that we've adapted Einsteinianism to. And I remember I took Metaphysics 203, Metaphysics and Epistemology 203 at SFU, and the professor, and there was me in the class and some physicists and some other scientifically minded people that read up on, understood Einstein. And here he was, this young, doctoral student teaching us, or would he have a PhD? I can't remember, saying to us that the Einsteinian universe, the four-dimensional universe, was an imaginary construct, and that the three-dimensional universe was real. Oh, I'm sorry. Me and the physicists, we just put our hands down, just slammed them on the table. What are you saying? Like this, right? So, anyways, that's the kind of state of things with the problem of specialization between fields. Because people studying philosophy now don't study physics. They don't study medicine. They don't study music, or do music. So, which is important because poesis creation is part of the old Scholastica. There's a sinful curriculum there used to be. Anyways, back to Mr. Tesla and Mr. Velikovsky, and I know that Velikovsky, I'm sure, was a doctor, Dr. Velikovsky. Of course he was, because he was a medical doctor, but also in terms of his, not a doctor honoris causa, which means like an honorary doctorate in almost any field you can name. It means, honoris causa means by reason of cause. Anyways, in terms of his ideas about Mars, having been through electrical storms and the current lashed it, and that my thoughts on that were immediately maybe the Hiawatha meteor was a Mars meteor, and I suggested to the University of Copenhagen, please look into that. Or is it the result of some kind of electrical discharge from within the planet to the rest of the universe? Or an incoming lash of electrical discharge rocketing between planets? Because in the case of the craters in the episode of the series I'm watching from the Thunderbolt Project, something in the sky, signs in the sky, no, it's not, symbols in the sky, something like that is the name of the series. They say that at the center of all these craters they have, the bullseye craters, that there are mounds of material. I'll bet you anything, considering that it's an electrical discharge and that the planets like iron and Earth especially are full of iron, you know, and it's in the area of the magnetic pole in the case of the Hiawatha, isn't it? Doesn't it kind of suggest where the magnetic pole might have been at the time that the meteor hit, and it wasn't an incoming object from outside the solar system? Was it a meteor, or was it an electrical discharge? I thought, well, a rock coming from Mars, from one of those. But has anybody ever found the Chicxulub meteor? They found the crater. Yes, they found the crater. I know that. But did they find the meteor? Have they gone for a dive for the meteor? Did they send a magnetometer into the Gulf of Mexico to look for it off Yucatan? Did they look in the center of Hudson Bay for any magnetite in the center of Hudson Bay? But that magnetite doesn't necessarily mean a meteor, which my originally and everybody's assumption about the Hiawatha object. Let's not stop calling it a meteor, and I stopped calling it an impact. Maybe it's not an impact. Maybe it was a discharge. Now I'm speaking as an electrician's kid, and I've seen electricity do some weird things, and I've felt it flow through my fingers. Not too bad, but I was raised around the currents. Never did understand them. They always said a mystical thing, but I never saw a lot of them. I just knew they were dangerous and powerful. Gravity is dangerous and powerful if you fall off a cliff, yeah. Or a big wave comes down on top of you. But what causes the waves? I already know that there's other fields where this is the thing, the electrics in the title. It doesn't, I said the electric cosmos. The thing is, it's not just the universe and the planets, and that it's more than gravity that we see. We see it directly too. It's right in front of us too. Anyway, so like the patterns of Valles Marineris on Mars are much obviously an electrical flash pattern of like an electrical wave, electrical claw. Same as here. That there's all these spots on Mars that they can see, and you can see them some on the Moon too. That have a bullseye crater, right? So is that the meteor that came in, and that's what we have in the same case as the Hiawatha and the things down there? Is that the meteor that came in, or is something? Maybe I shouldn't be calling it the impact, the Hiawatha object. Maybe it's a better term. Because maybe it wasn't a meteor. Maybe it was the result of a metallo-electric flash from we believe it to be a heavy iron core planet, don't we? What do we think is in the mantle? Iron. Or was it at the magnetic pole? Where are all the other magnetites coming from? Well, any big explosion like that is going to disperse a lot of material all over the planet, the same as all those rocks all over Mars. And I got thinking, the strange heap of gravel at Nimrod, how was it created? It could have been that the king ordered all the gravel that had fallen from the sky gathered up and built as a tribute to heaven. I see things with the ancient mind and would understand the logic of that. And also the building of Göbekli Tepe and the beginning of the star cults of Harlem. And the video I've been watching, they talk about the Mesopotamians having knowledge of the stars. And yeah, they do. They mention Ishtar and all that stuff. But the knowledge of the Sabians was probably pretty harshly wiped out by the Mongols in 1076. I believe that's the date when the temple of the moon god Sin, the moon goddess, also the one with the long hair. Anyway, so moon goddess Sin and the temple of the seven planets. That refers to the video when I say the thing with the long hair, but no, it's not her. Sorry, it's confusing. That's Venus, the planet that spins backwards, and it's relatively new. Maybe I thought maybe glanced Earth on the way by, which is kind of, I think, where Velikovsky has come from what I remember of having read him when I was young. I haven't read him since. I'm listening back to myself up, and then I discovered all his stuff on electrics, and oh yeah, it makes a whole lot of sense. It makes a whole one lot of sense. And that Einstein was not just go with it, but Mr. Velikovsky has a lot of valid things to say because of Velikovsky's willingness to look outside the biases of the age of reason into what they consider the age of superstition, and look at the ancient documents of the Bible and all other religions. He didn't just use the Bible, as he points out, and he got in trouble with religionists for putting other works of religion on the same par with the Bible. He got it from both sides for being a rogue intellectual, like he was. Rogue intellectual? No, rogue philosopher. We don't have a word. Rogue magister. Magister is the old title you would get when you graduated from Tübingen or Heidelberg or something. It means master, and it can mean teacher. Master, but it has other meanings originally in Latin, which I don't know enough to talk about. But when these events took place, the assumption has always been meteors, whether it's Chicxulub or Hiawatha, or there seems to have been other ones, and there's all this other stuff that went on in the Ice Age. The electric thing is really interesting, because I've also read and understand a lot about Tesla and how his mind worked and how he could build things, and he just understood electrics and magnetics. And him with his place in Colorado, which also, as I note, was the same place that they went and built Pike Peak in the wake of the wave that might come, if there's planetary displacement, which I never kind of thought about before as something mythical, but knowing Churchward and knowing Velikovsky and ideas about the nature of the planetary composition, yeah, okay. Oh, okay. I don't want to talk about that here now, but it's getting to me. I understand the geology, the geological implications of what Velikovsky has to say, and it is frightening. And so that's maybe why Tesla had his place in Colorado Springs. These videos, precepts that the Norths are in the same categories. Well, yes, they are, because they're connected. I know there's historical events also, and historical individuals and others associated, with the North. But the format of the legends, we're back into Great Antiquity. So it's Great Antiquity is the era that I'm talking about. This is before the Bible, before Sumer, before the Indus, before the Valley of the River and the rise of the Xia and Zhang dynasties in China, before they wiped out all memory of them. But Rome wiped out all memory of our history too. We are a civilization every bit as old as China. We're just fractured. Well, we have an intellectual tradition, and part of it has been these minds that emerge like Socrates, that come along, or teachers like the guy that they say died on the cross, but I think died in India. Because India says he did there, or we disbelieve them. There's more of them than us. And they've been around longer. Anyways, they're the people that can see the mathematician and already knew about the older ages of the world. They always took it as fact, as did the ancients. It's the golden age, before the ruination by fire. 12,800, when people were bigger and fairer. I guess, someone said blonde hair. I don't know. It's not a racial thing. It's just sort of like the evidence is there. There's even I don't know. I have to look in this place in Ethiopia where they say 20 meters down they found these large humans, 120 meters tall, 130 meters tall, so 130 centimeters tall, going whatever it comes out to, 1.30 meters, whatever. I'm sorry, I'm an old guy thinking that's like 7 feet. Unfair, but they're down and buried in caked in clay, like it's a certain burial tradition that was found also in the mountains in North America and elsewhere. And the references to the flesh pots in the Colburn would refer to that, putting the bodies in the flesh pots refers going to the grave. I mean, putting your body in pottery and putting it in the ground. Anyway, that's something else I found out of all this interesting stuff I'm finding out by listening to all the art, having to filter all the really weird videos, and then the dryness of the academic ones. But I found this series, and they go on about everything from mitochondrial DNA studies and stuff related to all this, and the bioelectrics started occurring to me. Bioelectrics, because they were talking about its role, and I already thought about, for example, in the role of ice and weather. I already knew about electrics and weather. The clouds have certain charge, and the other winds, there's, I think, negative areas are the low pressure areas, and the high pressure areas positive and stuff like that, and you feel better when there's more negative ions, all that stuff. We are bioelectric, all of us, and we're not just a physical pump of blood. It's just not our heart that does the work. Our brain does a lot of it because it all has to be organized and harnessed and coordinated, because it's an electrical field. So there's a doctor, I remember his name is Becker, in Toronto, in one of the Canadian weekly magazines that we no longer have, that were inserts, I guess it's inserts in the paper, but Dr. Becker, And there was another doctor in Sweden who did the same research at the same time. And the body is a bioelectric field. Your blood flows like your capillaries are negative, and your heart is positive, and your blood flows accordingly. The pump action isn't just a pump action of the little things in your veins and your arteries. No, it's the electrical nature of the body, and so is your body chemistry. All of it's electrical. That it's known that the axon, the axon that runs from the neuron to the say out the arm and out to the fingertip, all the way from the ganglia up in your arm and your shoulder. That axon has a sheath on it. It's called the myelin sheath, myelin sheath. Okay, it has solid state properties. Now, they used to think it was just an insulator to keep the potassium and the sodium in and out of the thing, and that's why the thing. But no, it has solid state properties. So the doctors were playing around with that because they were taking salamanders and frogs and growing back their legs, and you cut the leg off and grow it back. Okay, animal torture. I don't like it, but but they would study they would put electrodes or whatever on that axon, and just on the leg in general, and they would notice fluctuations in the myelin sheath just before the leg began, or the tail or whatever it was began to grow back. Excuse me, I have a cold. I got to take another Neocitrin. My pancakes are getting cold. This is the fourth time this happened. I put them in the microwave 3 times. No, I made them yesterday. I wind up making these. I find this all really fascinating. It's hard not to be the unprofessor. I'd rather be singing songs. The revelations about the ancient ages are really fascinating right now. I'll use another one too. So about all the stuff I've just been talking about, the bioelectrics. if you cut the and the myelin, and when the leg grows back, right? So he started experimenting. Dr. Becker, a guy in Sweden, found the same thing. Started doing the same thing. Goes, okay, well, I'll start stimulating that fluctuation in the myelin sheath, this little solid state activity. I better make that Neocitrin damn soon. Anyways, and he found that if he stimulated it, the leg would grow back right away. And the tail would grow back right away. So he worked his way up through mice to rabbits. And a rabbit leg would grow back perfectly. But the important element in this that I didn't tell you, it gives a trip to the whole body chemistry about cancer, is that those salamanders and frogs, they had cancer and would die anyway. Maybe it was given to them, I don't know. But no, I actually just found frogs with cancer and salamanders with cancer, but yeah, whatever, they had cancer. And any cancer in the animal would disappear when the leg or the tail got back. And you know how worms can regenerate? Well, it turns out mammals can too. Fish can, I think. I don't know. I don't know enough about fish biology. Yeah, so this whole idea that there's intelligent design in this is where I'm at in the third, fourth part of the series I'm watching. In the how it was the brain came to exist in such complex structure to accomplish such complex tasks as running a whole body like I've just been describing and being able to regenerate it. And don't poo-poo that right away, because these are both medical doctors that had this, and their research was upset a lot of people. But of course, there's a lot of money and people looking for cancer drugs and looking for ways to keep people in hospital and keep doctors rich. I don't want to talk about that too much, but yeah, there's a whole issue with bioelectrics provide a whole other way of looking at bodily health. It provides a whole other way of understanding also about planetary management and what we're facing. It's not just a chemical problem with the methane problem, the heating problem of the oceans. Well, we're talking legitimately to one of the ancient gods. That it's all a question of perspective and science's bias. And so science's bias has prevented them from understanding a man like Velikovsky, who, because he dared to look at the Bible and Enimalish and the other books of the Persian and Indian and Chinese empires and religions as valid, and not just mythology, and the bias that only Western science and mythology is valid, is also why the West also just burned all the witches and all their herbal knowledge. You know, we destroyed a lot of our own knowledge. Also, martial arts got done in by gunfire a lot. All the Western martial arts is actually where Asian martial arts came from. That's a bold statement, but I'll know a long story about it. The Greeks did a lot by going into Afghanistan, let's put it that way. Um, but yeah, so we're looking at an electrical universe, and that we have these huge events that we think are meteors or graze-bys by comets, which I'd been thinking about, like the Laurentian ice sheet, as to why it melted and became Lake Agassiz, and then was unleashed on the rest of the world as 200 feet of water. It's 200 feet, not 200, I'd say 200 meters of water. However much it is, it was when however much Dwarka is down by, is when Dwarka was flooded, because there's two water lines. There's the water line from 6000 BC, where it came up to that, and I heard 200 feet on one video just now, but I thought it was 200 meters. And then there was 125 meters, or 400 feet, and 12,800. It came up. When the Hiawatha impact melted the Arctic Ocean and the northern Greenland ice cap, the northern part of the Greenland Laurentian Cordilleran ice cap was all one. The year of the Missoula floods, I don't know, Dr. Zentner, I'm asking Dr. Nick Zentner of Central Washington, is it dated to a particular year? Because I'm sure, of course, and I think most of us are now, that it's connected to the Hiawatha thing, which I don't want to call an impact anymore because of what I'm realizing about electrics. But let's just call it Hiawatha impact for now, okay? That caused the destabilization of the North American ice complex and the Cordilleran ice sheet. Whether or not, I don't know, the famous ice-free corridor, was it down the foothills or down the trench? I don't know. But you have the trench coming down into the Missoula lobe, in the Lake Missoula, right? So it must be down the inside of if it ever was, down the lee of the Rocky Mountains, between the Missouri Coteau and the foothill, where the foothills are, that area. That wasn't lake bottom. Is it land riffle? Can we look at the terrain and realize it's water riffle? I've never looked at that, but that's an interesting question. I've never looked at that. The lay of the Canadian landscape and around Appalachia and the Black Hills, where the water line was. So where the water line? Could there have been an ice-free corridor? Well, the lower Yukon was ice-free. But the coast was ice-free, and there was a lot more of it. It was like another 60 miles out there, past Vancouver Island, past Washington, all of the Georgia Strait, the Strait of Anian, as I believe Wanda Fuca was correct in calling it, and it's a nice name, Anian. I like it. Rich in pearls and fur and silver, Oh yeah, exactly, gold. Yeah, exactly, it was. And beautiful cities, yeah, they were. We shelled them. We destroyed them. We were blind. We were blind to what had been there, but he wasn't. Anyways, he claimed it went through the Northwest Passage. Well, there was a way through it, but it led back out somewhere else, back into somewhere farther. He said, I don't know how he got back from there and claimed he made it through the Atlantic, but that was Maldonado that kind of did that. Anyways, be that as it may, the coastline was the Gulf of Alaska, from Kodiak, all off the Alexander Archipelago, southeast Alaska that is, and the BC coast, the Washington coast, Oregon coast. There was another 60 miles of land out there. And the Strait of Wanda Fuca, and quite a bit of Puget Sound, where, I don't know, it's right after the end of the Ice Age. Parts of it were where the Fraser Lobe was and stuff of the Cordilleran ice cap was. I don't know. Dr. Zentner and I hopefully is going to come up to BC and we'll talk about all this. It's my open invitation to him to come up to British Columbia and help me learn my own province's geology and let me talk about all this stuff that I've begun to realize, thanks partly to his videos. Also some other, like Ryan Hadfield of Rare Earth and the Nomadic Professor and his guy, and various others, Kings and Generals, and now this new series from these guys. I've lost their name again already, the Thunderstorm guys. I'm the brainstorm, the electrical storm. So this is the thing about Mr. Tesla and Dr. Velikovsky. It's really, really sad that they maybe didn't meet. and combined forces, that they were also, and Tesla never talked about went into the old scriptures and got the scientific establishment for against him for that reason, but he got them against him for that reason. He got conned by Edison, as we all know, and ripped off, and all his stuff confiscated, and he was working with Edison on the Manhattan Project, according to the reputation of what I've heard. I'd like, and he did independent corroboration of that. I'm not sure whether that's coming from a prop source or not. Not just on the Manhattan Project, he worked on the Manhattan. Yeah, was it the one where the ship disappeared? I don't mean the building of the bomb. What the hell is that ship's name? You know the one I mean, anyway. But yeah, the displacing, getting a making technology to make his frame of special relativity that could be moved through time space with what's inside correct in the lattice. And they got it up to the Philadelphia experiment, what it was. They got it up to, thanks to Tesla's input on electrics and magnetics, they got it up to a cubic meter they could move as a lattice. And intact, unaltered. They hadn't done it on anything alive when they did the whole ship. No, had they already done it with cattle? Yeah, they'd already done it with cattle and had them come back half in whatever they were sent in. They had tried it with live animals, but they still did it with the ship. Stupid idiots. But that's the military for you. The military have soldiers are there to die. When they sign up, that's what they sign up for, boys. Remember that if you ever sign up for the military. Remember, you're just all us civilians, we're just collateral too. Okay, I get it. Okay, so we're looking at an electrical force that obviously can cause earthquakes, right? That maybe plate tectonics itself is maybe. What am I saying? Maybe because of what it implies about the mantle and the core and the magnetic nature of the planet, and the whatever's down there, or what it can do, what it's capable of. But that even Churchward's ideas about there being gas pockets under the mountains are essentially correct. Those are the magma pockets he's talking about. That he talked about, that basically before the Ring of Fire was understood. James Churchward in his Moo series, he talked about there being huge gas pockets underneath the mountains, and that's why they were what they were and why they blew up all the time. Now that's all true too, but the electrical nature of even the ice caps, the nature of the ice cap itself has an electrical property as like a solid state property relative to the oceans. And it also, as ice, it's much more higher conductive than the land it's on top of, which would be, is it SEMA or CL? See, it's continent under there. CL is mostly silicon and aluminum. I say how it types of it. Silicon and magnesium is the other one. It's hard to think that there's that much aluminum on the planet, but you basically, yeah, it's all that stuff about tinfoil. Anyway, so basically, even Greenland now is a certain static charge, and the oceans are static charge. So the movement of the currents, like they talk about the Gulf Stream and the Atlantic Salt Conveyor, the thermocline, the thermal belt, there's a term for it, thermohaline. The thermohaline current that is like a top current going north, and the Atlantic, and then goes south cold, fresh with more fresh water in for Greenland underneath, and that's all changing. But that's all electric too. All the movements of all the currents are electric. So this raises questions about that big body of water off the Pacific right now. It's that way. I should be pointing that way where I'm sitting straight ahead there. In the Pacific off North America here between the Gulf of Alaska and so on. About the big, huge bunch of static, warmer water. Why is it warmer? Why is it warmer? See, they don't know. And could it all just have to be with building a static charge? And that also relates to all the lightning, that causes the fires, and the behavior of the fires. It also accounts for the behavior of the fire worlds, where they begin to seem more like living creatures, because it's the fire interacting with the electrics, the burning of the burning of the carbon in the area, namely the trees and the humans. into electrics, and the behavior of the electrics is being introduced. The behavior of fire is influenced by, not just influenced, because it's connected. It's connected to the fire, because it caused the fire. The dry heat. The dry heat is the electric dry ion heat that made the landscape dry. It's all connected. Everything is connected, and that's what Tesla could see. And Tesla could build us things. So why I wanted to talk about him and put him in the title is that Tesla could build things. Like he built the thing for the Philadelphia experiment, so the reputation goes. He built the thing that could shake New York. He just could attach something to the building, and without any mechanical energy at all, he could have the Empire State Building in dust in 9 minutes. But his whole thing was magnetics and electrics. That guy. And they confiscated all his papers. They called him crazy. They did the same with Wilhelm Reich. They did kind of the same with Velikovsky. He's been redeemed thanks to all the engineers out there. There's a lot of engineers working on Tesla. And I'll bet that the Tesla guys are talking to and I mentioned Russians because it's going to be the Russians doing it. The Tesla guys are probably talking to the Electric Universe Velikovsky. Velikovsky, I imagine he's quite big in Russia, although he was a Westerner when he did all this, published out of Vienna and stuff. Big subject. Like, and I'm not in the field. I wish I was up on campus, and but what do you talk about this? All you do is go back and look at the mythography. I'm just putting the jigsaw puzzle together, right? I see all the pieces fit. I just see all the pieces fit. The electric cosmos, it makes a lot of sense to me because it also points new directions in medicine and so on. But it also raises huge questions about the electrical nature of human civilization, also not our dependency on it. I don't mean, right? But all of us combined as a body mass, as a mass of humans. You know how we are when we get together, all too many in one cage, all too many in one big city. We get all antsy at each other. Yeah, well, that's maybe just natural electrical discharge, natural electrical. God, we just can't take it. It makes our systems upset, right? But everybody goes, well, you feeling stressed, Yeah, here's take some medication. No, you go out in the country, go connect with your nature. But yeah, it's that thing about you love. You know how that thing feeling when you hold somebody you love. I'm not talking about having sex with them. When you hold somebody you love, that's a flow of warmth and trust and stuff like that. That's that flow of electrical energy, that heat, your body chemistry, all of it. It's all, how it feels electric and makes your spine tingle. It's all electrical. It's all electrical. Well, so is the planet. So is this Mother Earth that we love so much. We tell ourselves we do while raping her and killing her whales and digging up her ores and mining her seas and her lands for trees and life and making death and digging up death and spewing it into the air. We're doomed. We're doomed. We wrote our own tombstone. I see it so clearly. I'm not frightened by it at all anymore. I'm just trying to get their young to wake up and say, look, you can do a lot of things in the meantime. Sing and dance for one thing. But just open your eyes to the wonder of the world that we are, the wonder of the ages that we are, and humanity included. We are a wonder of the world, collectively. But to look back at our past and know what really happened and realize that all these ancient events that we always were told since the 19th century, since science took over basically from the Bible in the West, that they're just all mythology and they're fairy stories and they're men in the sky and stuff like that. Well, maybe they weren't men, but maybe the wars between the planets were very, very real. And I don't know whether I buy the line in the video series I'm watching that I'd have to think about the augurs and whether there were comets associated with the Trojan War, as they kind of imply there. And I don't remember there being a comet in the story of Volospot, so that doesn't fit. They mentioned the Old Norse myths, but the timing of the comets to that we know certain events, but they tie it to even things like the Trojan War, and then before the Trojan War would have been Thera. And so even what the Velikovsky and book guys, Thera was an eruption, of course, that devastated the Eastern Mediterranean and all of Egypt. And there's other videos I've seen that tie the Hyksos to having lived, their capital was on the Delta, and that they left, most of them went back to where they came from across the sea, but they were the Hebrews in the one account, and there's also all the events, there's several accounts that tie up where the Exodus, all the events of the Exodus can be accounted for by Sarah, but even Sarah, and Kilimanjaro, and all the volcanoes. Maybe need to being thought about is electrical events from a discharge of the planetary. I don't want to say the core of the metal. I don't know where it's coming from, but the electrical nature of the planet and the solid state. Like I say, not just the solid state nature of the body, but the solid state nature of the continents and the water and the atmosphere, and it's not just doing a lot of mechanical things like flying jets and driving cars and building highways and polluting the air with pollutants and heat and activity and moving it. We're also creating a new electrical system in the air, a new electrical structure. No, I don't know. I'm not enough of a solid state science to speculate anything further than that. But the additive formula of 12 billion humans by the time the century is even half over. So where are we now? 7? We're over 7 now somewhere. From what, 100 million a couple of centuries ago? Ecology can't take that. But the oceans, like I said, about things like there's no El Nino this year to account for the weird weather here. The giant windstorm we had. But what could account for a giant windstorm? Electrics. And what could account for all the storms around a volcano when it's erupting? Electrics. What can account for animal behavior in advance of a volcano or earthquake? Electrics. And what can account for bird navigation and other animal sensing abilities for navigation? Electrics. Spontaneous personal animosity? Electrics. And human psychology? Well, they try and deal with it mechanistically as electrics, but the Great Spirit in the East. Here it's the Sagalitai, but that's an invented term for the high one, the one on high, but the chief on high. But it was invented by the church. That term, it doesn't mean holy. Sagali doesn't mean holy. It just means higher. Those are phrases from the Chinook jargon, which I speak a little bit of as part of my regional history and identity. Anyways, this is all fascinating to think further about, and I just wanted to update myself here in my vlogs before I finally get to my pancakes. Another 45 minutes. I can eat them cold. Get them eaten. But I'm beginning to look at, and I'm more interested in local politics in a material sense. Including just early British Columbia history, which I'll be doing of the political realities of North America right now, geopolitics of North America. But ancient history has always been my field, and I've been finding a lot of ancient history, and now I've always known the geology. I've wanted to know the geology here, and now the geology here all has to do with the retreat of the ice and why it happened. So, I don't know, I guess you could say my mind got on fire, and I'll end by quoting Heraclitus. I'm talking about Heraclitus. So, Heraclitus was one of the two great philosophers of ancient Greece who weren't Socrates and Aristotle and Plato, right? There's many others, I could start in Layman, but I won't bother, but I just want to talk about Heraclitus. There's Parmenides, and when you talk about the history of science, Parmenidean thinking and cosmos is that time is static and it's like water. Whereas Heraclitus said no, it flows. It's fire. And he said water, when you pour it out of a bucket, you can't put it back in the same way. He's right. The same as with time. So Heraclitus has many of his lines. We only know about Heraclitus in fragments because unless they're found in the library of the school of Epicurus in the Athens monastery Achaedag, which nobody has enough time to decipher and x-ray all the scrolls, and there's not enough people who speak ancient Greek who could do it. I'm just running out of air, that's why I talk like that. or Herculaneum, or should we find the Library of Hermes where probably there is Heraclitus, because Heraclitus studies in Upper Chaldea, as did Pythagoras, who's the other guy I was going to mention. Heraclitus only survives in fragments, but the ones that we have are fascinating, and Martin Heidegger, there's a whole school of philosophy of it, basically, right? On being and time, and on time and being is his two books. I've had both of them, although I never read full of them. I've never read them all. I just scanned them, realized what he was on about. 2 months of German Mind. Thank you, Eric Heller. This is Eric C.H. Anyways, Disinherited Mind. Go look up that book by Eric Heller. Anyways, the idea that 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 fire is all everything. Fire is change. The universe is constant change. Is the essence of Heraclitus. That everything is on fire. Everything is fire. Everything is fire. Everything can become fire. E equals mc squared. Basically, was what he was amounted to. And basically, it's also in Hinduism in the same form, because you've got Nataraja, the fire of the cosmos. Every little atom is this world of dancing atoms. And that's what the famous Nataraja symbol of the Institute, where they did the boson thing. They have the Nataraja, Lord of the Dance. And the Lord of the Dance is every little particle all the way up to the cosmos is this gigantic dance. Yeah, well, it's all an electrical whirl. Anyways, so that they're all, this is where Heidegger was coming from on this, that your being in time is a relative thing that humanity perceives because of the nature of our consciousness. It has to perceive it that way in order to deal with it. But being itself is we're an electrical flux. Our thoughts and the particular way our body and brain are born and developed and things happen to it. It's all electrical activity forming how our brain forms. Your environment, and as it develops, of course, that you develop more neurons as you're growing. That we're actually a self-replicating little electrical organism that's pre-programmed somehow. So this gets back to that intelligent design thing. We're programmed into our genetics. The genetics is the electrical design, and guess what the DNA essentially is a long strip of solid state derived electrically structured material. So anyways, Mr. Tesla and Mr. Velikovsky also say the same thing about the planets. Well, Mr. Velikovsky does, and I'm sure if Mr. Tesla had a chat with him, he would agree. And probably, I think, if Tesla did write about this, I wouldn't be surprised if it was very similar. But Heraclitus said, all things are fire. All things can be exchanged for fire. Fire is all things. And fire is as Heidegger points out, is the participle of zeon, which is a Greek verb for to be, or sein in German. Zen. Yeah, it's like Zen, like spelled Z-E-N. Right? Zeus. Leo, God. Jupiter. This giant electrical storm out in the sixth planet, which Velikovsky gets into, that all those old ancient gods he sees as actual physical beings in the sky, lashing big electrical whips and stuff like that, having wars and thunderbolts between the planets. I'm okay. I had never thought of that before as being likely, but having seen the behavior of objects in switchyards and knowing what electricity is capable of and knowing what it's capable of. And it does seem like something alive, and maybe it is. Maybe those firewalls in California have more going on than we think. But that big patch of warm water off the Pacific, that's part of why we're having the weird weather here and why our storms are probably going to be worse. But the land is a certain charge, and the oceans are a certain charge. We have a big patch of ocean there that somehow, in being warmer, why is it warmer? Is it building charge in the water? But what's underneath the water is a huge layer of expansive seema. Now there's seamounts out there, but again, those are like volcanic subterranean volcanoes that haven't come in, of subaquatic volcanoes that haven't surfaced. But again, are they boils of magma out of the planet, or are the magma boils out of the planet caused not by chemical activity within the mantle, but by magnetoelectric material activity within the mantle? Is the Hiawatha creator? Is it the creator? Is the Hiawatha creator? No, is the Hiawatha creator meteorite? And the ones that they'll find, are they from Mars? Which they could be, given the Valles Marineris and what I just watched about Mars. Or are they a result of electrical flashes coming out of the Earth? You see, are they? You see, like this becomes a really provocative question. Where is the Shiklikub meteor? Or what are the isotopic contents of the meteors that were found? Like the object. Well, I've seen the ones that come in from the sky or from somewhere else. Like the one that came over the Urals. Or was it town again? Not Magnitogorsk. In the Urals. The one that came down out of the sky in the Urals. They caught that one. Oh, there's one up the Yukon and stuff. They catch these things every once in a while. So those ones are coming interplanetarily. But these big blasts, the big planet destroyers, are they really coming from outside, or might they be our own planet's electrical activity causing it? I don't know. I'm just speculating. But I'd like to know, the isotopic thing of values of the different meteors and where they're from. And yeah, if the meteorite, if the meteorite in the lobby of the University of Copenhagen Library or wherever it is, that's the Danish Government Institute of Geology, whatever it is in Copenhagen, they have a huge meteorite that was from the Hiawatha crater before they knew it was the Hiawatha crater. Well, they knew it was a meteor, but they didn't know it was that meteor that did that. You gotta think about it. Yeah, of course they hit the ice cap. Of course it was going to cause this devastation, but the actual date on it, I don't know if they've exactly dated it, but I think somebody else has dated it by water records, and ice records as to the date of the flood. We know what happened now. Our history has been pushed back to 12,800 BC, that our own records have records of, and those records aren't just from one religion, they're from all continents. Because human history, we can date it 12,800 BC, and we know there was a golden age before, because we remember it in all our cultures. The young people don't know about all this, which is why I'm talking about it, because younger people that I know that don't know anything about all of this or politics or anything, they all need to know about all of it. Because the only way that you're going to survive your future is if you know about your past. That's kind of my motto too. The only way you know your future is to survive your future is know about your past. And also, don't be afraid of the end of the world. Be in marvel at it that you get to live to see it. And know why, but just know why it happened. But discover all the wonderful things that humanity has done since in the course of striving, and all the temples of Iran. And I mentioned Heraclitus again. Zeus is the lightning, he said. And the lightning is the fire in your mind consciousness. And that's how I've always taken that thing that I learned from Heraclitus. But now I see it was also the lightning that scarred the land, the lightning that touched the earth, the lightning that scarred Mars. Zeus is the lightning. I'm not speaking as a pagan. I'm speaking as the lightning is a force unto itself, a plasmoid that scarred a planet that we have evidence of now, right in front of our eyes. And I have to think we start looking at Earth the same way and realizing that our own worries about it, say the flip of the planet and all that stuff, you hear in all the crazy videos, they're going to polar reversal and all that stuff. Yeah, it can happen, damn it. But don't panic about it, okay? It does no good to panic. It's interesting to study, but when that time comes, I don't know, what are you going to do? But in the meantime, find out as much as you can of everything you can. There's no way off the planet, I'll tell you that, unless you appreciate that electrics may provide that way off it, magnetoelectrics. I'm sure Mr. Tesla, if they'd given him time and not put him in a cage, let his mind run free, Mr. Tesla, how can we get to another planet? To do what, he would ask. See? Why should we get to another planet? To do what? To do what we did to this one? You think they let us off? Have you believe in aliens? Well, I'll tell you what. Do you think they let the species off the planet? You're kidding me. For what we do to each other, what we talk about doing to other worlds, and the empire we want to build across the cosmic. No, we're being kept in quarantine until we're just a little more mature. Okay. Oh, you silly humans. Oh, you silly humans. If only you knew how silly you look in the cosmos. You know, your overweening pride and your thoughts that you would have a civilization that could last for thousands of years when you can't even pick up your own garbage and know enough to take out your trash and not poop where you live, like I do, right? Anyways, I'll have to poop somewhere where we live. That's my bathroom here, but but you know that the presumption that humanity deserves a future in space is entirely presumptuous. And what is space? Because the electrical universe infers that, like as Mr. Tesla did with his little specialized frame of reference he and Mr. Einstein built that did the Philadelphia experiment when they expanded it up from a cubic meter to a whole battleship or frigate or whatever it was, with men on it and cattle and sheep and all that shit. And they went, all that stuff happened because they didn't go bigger than that meter. And Tesla said it wasn't possible. If Tesla said it was possible to build a lattice larger than a meter, they would have done it. Instead, they fired him and they ran the device anyway, the stupid fools. But that's unity for you, and that's why you all deserve to die. I'm not Q from Deep Space Nine, but I sure wish I had the power to be. Right? Humanity, you have been judged by yourselves. You know, you have been condemned by yourselves, by your own vanity, by your own presumptions that you haven't the thoughts to ever do anything like that, or the thoughts to ignore your own ancient myths, your own ancient wisdom, to ignore the elders of your peoples and your tribes, to ignore the great books. Yeah, there was a lot of bullshit pulled because of the great books. Is the problem. Taking the Lord's name in vain is that one commandment, but that's only that commandment and only that book, you know. But what's what it means is, you know, taking the name of something for the wrong purpose, you know, and to make rules about things. No. This is about knowing what happened in the sky and why the seas rose and why there was fire and destroyed all the mammoths and all that stuff and why the Missoula floods and maybe why the coast of Norway and Scotland are ragged as they are and, you know, why the seas rose in 6000 BC, you know. This is all stuff that affected all of our pasts, and it's remembered in all of our mythologies. And science now is just waking up to it. And the parts of science that are doing that